The key is John's description of the mark's function.
No one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast, or the number of his name.
How is that possible? A generic "I'm in the club" mark would be virtually useless in preventing commerce, especially on the black market, which might be expected to thrive in a post-nuclear war world. As long as there's money, currency, in circulation, paper notes or metal coins that society agrees have a specific value, buying and selling will go on, regardless of what the government has to say about it. If you don't believe me, ask your friendly neighborhood drug dealer or prostitute. The money that goes through their hands bears no semblance of official regulation. No one other than the parties involved in the transaction have any idea what's going on. No records are kept, no taxes are paid, no infringements of the law are divulged. If you think about it, cash is often the very thing that makes crime possible. Now, imagine yourself in the post-nuke world. Governments that haven't already fallen are teetering on the brink of collapse. Most of the world, financially, looks like Germany in the 1920s. Remember the Third Seal Judgment? A loaf of bread for a full day's pay. It's not just that food is scarce, it's that inflation is rampant. People no longer trust the currency of their nations like they used to. The value of a dollar, or euro, yen, peso, pound, or ruble, is directly related to the confidence people have in the government issuing the currency. And what is the totalitarian mind's standard answer to that kind of problem? Control, of course, starting with wages and prices. It will be complicated since the crisis has engulfed the entire globe, but with the power and technology now at the disposal of this centrally administered one-world government, the first order of business will be to reinvent the socio-economic wheel. Cash, as we have seen, is practically obsolete in the world today. And in a world where control is imposed globally from the top down, currency will be the first thing they look at. Is it even necessary anymore? The Antichrist will have been pondering this for years, and now, near the halfway point in the tribulation, he will implement his plan. It will consist of two parts: electronic money and a comprehensive database that tracks and monitors every living human being. The necessary technology is commonplace already. It's been around for years. The only things lacking have been the will and the authority to put the plan into action. There will be no apparent downside from the point of view of the Antichrist administration. It will be seen as the ultimate way to extract submission from the Earth's unruly population. But it's also a marketing man's dream. The ostensible benefits for the populace will be obvious, tangible, and easily communicated. Putting lipstick on this pig, presenting this plan to the world will be a snap. The electronic money part is easy enough to comprehend. We've been using it for years in the form of credit cards, debit cards, bank checks, internet banking, and ATM machines. Up until now, we've always used currency as well, but seldom for anything approaching a sizable purchase. Large amounts of cash, in fact, are a red flag giveaway to law enforcement officials that some sort of crime is taking place. Money laundering often involves converting currency to electronic money, which can be more easily transferred without raising suspicion. So the jump to a cash equals crime mindset will be simple enough. In the wake of the anarchy that follows the war, crime prevention will become a worldwide priority. The vast majority of survivors, more fearful of bandits than of bureaucrats, which is, by the way, a big mistake, will welcome a cashless monetary system as the first step in a comprehensive anti-theft program. But credit or debit cards can be stolen too, and they're only slightly harder to use than stolen cash. The key to minimizing personal financial crime is requiring foolproof ID. So what is needed, the Antichrist will say, is a comprehensive worldwide personal identity system. The Americans developed the prototype for it way back in 1935 when we introduced the Social Security number. Now every U.S. citizen and a fair number of of aliens have a 9-digit number that, theoretically, identifies each of them to the exclusion of anyone else in this country. The system, however, isn't foolproof. Because the number is not actually part of you, it's possible to borrow, steal, or duplicate it. Almost no one actually checks. It's possible to pass for a legitimate U.S. citizen merely by using the Social Security number of some other person, dead or alive. Illegal immigrants have been known to use the Social Security numbers of other taxpayers when applying for jobs in the U.S., paying their FICA taxes into the account of the number's true owner, thereby cheating themselves of future benefits in order to maintain anonymity. It is said that a clever thief with little more than your name and Social Security number, not the card, mind you, but just the number, can steal your identity and with it your entire financial world. But what if your public identity were part of you, and it went with you wherever you went? In a way, of course, that's always been the case. Yahweh himself designed it that way. Your fingerprints, retinal pattern, voice print, and DNA profile are virtually impossible to fake, though they're not terribly practical yet, as on-the-spot ways of verifying your identity. And they're not terribly computer-friendly. They all require huge amounts of memory and expensive equipment to access. All that's really needed is a 10 or 11-digit number. 10 digits would allow for 9,999,999,999 separate identities, barely enough to accommodate the present population of the Earth. The number would be unique to you, something that no one could access without your physical presence, just like a fingerprint or retinal scan. Perhaps the ideal personal code will be determined to contain 3 sets of 6 digits, 666. We'll discuss this familiar prophetic theme at length in a moment. For now, let's just examine how the ID system might work. The first 6 numbers would form a rough physical description of the number's owner. 1 digit describes your gender, male, female, and, if I know Satan, a designation for surgical monstrosities somewhere in between. 1 identifies your race, a range of designations designed to promote diversity, something dear to Satan's heart. The last 4 numbers state the year you were born. Without this information, your 18-digit code could not easily be stolen and used by someone else. The person or machine checking the number would, for example, be looking for a 47-year-old Hispanic woman, not the Asian teenager who's trying to buy a car with her number. The last 12 digits in the code would be your own personal ID number, broken into 2 sets of 6 to make it easier to read and memorize. The computer, of course, would know that number 254874-568342 is owned by a white female born in 1997, not a person of some other description. So faking the number without access to the hacker-proof database would be virtually impossible. The easiest, low-tech way of applying the ID code to your body would be to etch the number in barcode form onto the skin, like a hyper-accurate machine-generated tattoo. Like the laser-readable UPC, or Universal Product Code, marks found on every grocery item, a simple scan would tell the system that you are really you. The technology to achieve this has been around since the mid-1970s. It's cheap, reliable, and familiar, and the world is gearing up for the next generation biological model. Houston inventor Thomas W. Heater holds the U.S. patent number 5,878,155, described as a, quote, method for verifying human identity during electronic sale transactions, unquote. For all practical purposes, it's a barcode ID tattoo designed to facilitate Internet commerce. Other, more sophisticated ways of applying the mark are under development as we speak, and we'll discuss them in a moment. But for now, let's pause to consider the ramifications. In normal use, having the mark could make your financial life safe and convenient, or at least that's how the government's marketing gurus will present it. You're off to work in the morning. You need to put a few gallons of gas or a couple of kilowatts of electricity into your car. Just scan your mark into the machine. Your purchase will automatically be debited from your account. Same thing with that cup of coffee and bagel you habitually pick up. Your paycheck isn't a check at all anymore. Rather, every afternoon at 6 o'clock, a day's wages are automatically deposited into your account. Less taxes, of course. Pick up a dozen eggs and a carton of milk on the way home, but don't pay for it. Just scan your mark. Your bank is no longer a private corporation, one of many from which you can choose based upon its services or convenience. It's now a single world government monolith that controls all of the planet's finances. Everything you owe to them. Everything you have saved up is merely ones and zeros, electronic money, in their computers. This state of affairs is the result of a global financial meltdown predicted in Scripture, something we'll cover in a future chapter. You can check your account balance anytime you like. Just scan your mark into the reader that's built into your cell phone or computer. And if you run a little short, don't worry, we'll cover you. We'll just roll the shortfall into your loan. Virtually every adult has a loan, which includes their house, car, everything they own, all rolled into one lump sum, all with the same low interest rate, all borrowed from the only legal lender on earth, the central government. As long as you don't get too far out ahead of your income, you're golden, or at least that's what they'll tell you. Remember the line from the old folk song, 16 tons? I owe my soul to the company store. They'll say, crime is a thing of the past. While a blatant lie, this marketing myth will receive so much airtime that people will actually begin to believe it. It is true that certain types of crime no longer pay. Dangerous illegal drugs are no longer available because money is no longer anonymous. Muggings and armed robberies no longer take place because there's no cash to steal, and fencing stolen goods is next to impossible. Some crimes are history, though, simply because the government has opted to decriminalize, regulate, and tax them instead. So prostitution has moved off the streets into legal bordellos. Marijuana, cocaine, ecstasy, and other usually non-lethal drugs have been made available through licensed dealers. The harder stuff is available only with a doctor's prescription, of course paid for by the World State's Universal Health Plan. Taking a page from the lottery playbook, such services are now actually seen as a good thing because a proportion of the proceeds are set aside to fund public education, which is now little more than a vehicle for indoctrinating obedient, politically correct future taxpayers. Child abuse, stalking, and rape are no longer considered crimes if the victims aren't actually killed in the process, depriving the state of potential future tax revenues. Many local governments have noted that laws that had been pushed through by moralistic, holier-than-thou do-gooders before the rapture were out of step with the current shades of gray pop theology. What once had been viewed as a matter of right and wrong, good or bad, is now seen more clearly as merely convenient or inconvenient. This attitude has now been reflected in new laws decriminalizing, quote, victimless offenses.